Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. I had a lazy day yesterday. Well, not out here it was a lazy day because I did absolutely nothing when I should have done stuff. It seems to happen more often lately where I just get a day behind, and this time of year it's not really a big deal. I mean, we've had no bright weather now for some considerable time, virtually all of this week, but today it's rumoured that the clouds may clear and we'll get a break. We'll get some sunshine. So I've got plans where my new systemic pesticide can actually be used, but I'm not prepared to use that if it gets too late in the day, even if the sun does come out. It's just got to wait for the right sort of day. I need it done quite early in the day, give it a chance to dry. I don't want stuff going into what are cooler nights nowadays, still wet. Yeah, so that's not going to happen. Things to come. I've got our Orchid Society show on Saturday. That's also a travel day because I'm picking my daughter up before the show. So very early start for me. There won't be any filming done on Saturday, that's for sure. But whatever I do at the show, I can put together on Sunday and post it then. Because my daughter's down for the weekend, I won't be doing a Sunday morning chat this week. So I'll post the show details instead. So that'll be something for Sunday, and then we get back to normal on Monday. As far as today is concerned, I was just going to have a look round at some things that just go on in the background and never really get looked at. This giant up here, the Dendrobium chryseum, these canes are really extending this year. These were the canes from last year, and they stalled because it just didn't have a root system basically, so they just didn't fulfill their ultimate length by any means. This year they're pushing up nicely, and I've changed the way it hangs now so that it leans over, the idea being that soon these canes should start to arch over, because if they're going to remain upright, this is going to be difficult to accommodate. So I'm hoping the canes will arch. When it was originally mounted, it was actually mounted upside down. That's why the canes hung down. And that might not be its natural form. And if its natural form is to grow upright, then it might have to go in a pot, because it'll just be too tall. These canes, when I first got it, were well over a metre long. Now, although these aren't, they're probably, I don't know, they're getting on. They're pushing on. They're still growing, so they're going to get longer. There's some other things lurking. I'm thinking of. Oh yes, my little Cernua has decided to come out of its rest period, so it's now pushing out quite a few new growths in several places. It's certainly not going to achieve the spectacle it achieved last year in December, which was a mass blooming. It's not going to do that, but nonetheless we do have new growths starting now. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's about 8 new growths on there, which isn't bad. Oh, 9, there's another one tucked up in there. So there's quite a few new growths, and it'll just depend on whether they all happen to get to blooming size and bloom at the same time. Quite honestly, with 3 or 4 blooms per spike on each new growth, if they did all bloom at once, it would still be quite a show, I think. So that's that little one. That just pushes on in the background. Don't take any notice of it. I'm keeping my eye on the twinkles at the moment. They're all over the place, some in pots, some mounted. This is the tiny twinkle. Now, this should be showing some spikes soon, looking at the time of year it bloomed last year. But then the new growths aren't fully mature yet, so perhaps I'm jumping the gun here. It's just trying to find one of the latest ones that's the most mature. No, they're not really mature enough yet, but spikes should come on that in the not too distant future, I'd say within the next month or so anyway. That's that one. Excuse me. And the one next to it, which is also a twinkle, twice the flipping size. They're not all miniatures. Yeah, this one, God, flipping mealybug on there. This one is starting spikes. Yeah, so we got quite a few spikes coming on this one. So that's doing its thing. It's funny actually, the number of new growths on here has sort of doubled the size of the plant really, which is good, because although this looked fantastic when it was in bloom last time, the plant wasn't actually as good as it gave the impression of. There were quite a few leaves had been cut, quite a few brown tips on the older leaves, but obviously those leaves will eventually fall. I think that's probably the oldest bulb in the centre there, and the leaves are getting quite yellow on there now. So they will drop eventually, but yeah, the plant wasn't quite as good as the impression it gave, because you just tended to look at the blooms and not necessarily the plant. But the new growths are good, so it's pulled on nicely. So I mean, I can see, just looking at that, I've seen 2 mealybugs, and I can now see some scale. If you look down through that gap, there's 2 adult scale there. So I need to get on with that spray, I really do. A couple of scale on an oncidium is not a big deal, but if they get out of hand it will be. There's my little Cattleya lurking up round the back here. I think might have a sheath now, I'm not sure. This is the other one that's got little lemon drops in it. This is the little lemon drops there, come on mouth, crossed with Encyclia vetilinea. It's a bit early to see a sheath on there yet, but it's bloomed on the last 2 growths, and its new growth is pushing on. So there's no reason why it shouldn't bloom down the line. It seems to be doing okay, that one. It's got a nice root system. It sounds like it's raining yet again. So much for getting a bit of sunshine. Oh, and one thing I did notice, the chrysotoxum up the back, the new growths, which are sort of like, that's the best one there. You have to use a bit of imagination, but everywhere there's one of those yellow bumps near the top of the cane is potentially a flower spike. Yeah? So we should get a good blooming on that. There's other new canes all over this one, and it's also capable of blooming on old canes. You know, it'll re-bloom on the same cane the following year. It does eventually fizzle out, but you know, it's doing okay. This Miltonia here, blooms are going now, so this one's about to drop the rest of the blooms. See what I mean? I'm just getting too much stuff around at the moment. I've got to get on with this spray. Even this new growth down here has been bitten, so those leaves are going to be marked when they come out, so I've got to get on with it. Oh, Martin said he was worried about the spots on my Sotoanum. I'll let you into a secret. In the main, these spots are a direct result of the aphid infestation, and a few of the aphids got on the spikes. And the worst of the spotting is where there's a cluster of spikes touching a leaf. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Some of the older leaves around the back are dying off. That's not a big deal. That's its natural progression. But there are certainly more spots on here than there used to be. It's a thing with oncidiums. Zygos suffer from it as well. It is a fungus attack at the end of the day. Luckily it's not bacterial, but what often happens is, you know, if you get little nips in your leaves, little bites, then you get an infection in the place where the nip was, so that's where you get the spots from. But some oncidiums are more prone to spotting than others. If you want to keep at it with a fungicide, you can stop them ever getting the spots, but I don't want to use chemicals as a precaution, if you know what I mean. I'd rather not use them at all. But although there may be certain things you can do to get rid of pests without using strong chemicals, you've got a job to do that with funguses and rots and things. You've got to get something on there that works. Or you could lose parts of your plant, or even all your plant. This one's coming on nicely. You're going to like these blooms when they come out. See, now even that bud there's got a huge mealybug on it. Had a huge mealybug on it. This has been struggling for quite a while. If it didn't have that nice strong new growth there and a good set of roots pushing out, I would have taken that spike off, but I'm going to let it bloom. You can see what colour it's going to be. It's a little Hamiltonaria or Hamiltonara, whatever one of those is, but that's what one of those is when it eventually comes out. Yeah, a lot of the Oncidium types have all been moved now. That's why that shelf looks so empty. I didn't want to put the second layer of shade netting up too high, so the easiest way to get the Oncidium types down in a bit more, a bit less light, was to actually move them, which means other places are now cluttered up. But nonetheless, it needed doing. So I did shuffle around, but it was a temporary thing. And obviously, as the light levels get less and less, things can go back where they were, because the light levels will just be lower, so it won't matter anymore. We got some Cattleya buds pushing out in various places. I can't get at them all, but this is the most obvious one. This will be out first. And this has done something very strange. You're going to love this. Cattleyas do strange things. This has put up a sheath, yeah? And it's pushed a leaf right up through the middle of the sheath. Now, I don't know whether there are actually any buds in there as well. There seems to be a big solid lump at the base, but that's a leaf. That's nothing to do with the sheath. Yeah? Now, this one's behaving properly. 2 leaves, it is a bifoliate, and the sheath's come up the middle with the buds at the bottom. But that's got a real distortion on it. Very strange. This is the one we cut the rhizome on, so, it's got new growth heading off in quite a few directions here. There's another one here. That's just getting its second leaf, looks like. And this one, that's on the same plant, that's on the same plant, and this one here. So there's actually 4 new growths on the go on that one, or newer growths. This one's not going to last much longer, I'm afraid. This puts on a lovely show. Its next new growth is already pushing on. Yeah, it's got 2 leads effectively, and they seem to be taking it in turns. Yes, it would be nice if they both bloomed at the same time, but quite honestly, I'd prefer them to bloom at different times and have these blooms around over a longer period than have more of them for a shorter period. It's just my way of thinking. What else is around? I've got a Disa that's coming into bloom. Now it's funny, this one did one of these. It won't be the same plant because they only bloom once. But one of these did this last year. Actually bloomed in late autumn, in towards winter. That's not their time. But lots of people have told me they've had real struggles or troubles with their Disas this year. For some reason it hasn't been a good year. Right, I've got to get on. I've got to wash this. I've got to take the header tank out. You can see all the bits down in the bottom there, or probably you can. It's got dirty where the lid's open. Things fall in there. It's just got grubby. It needs a good clean. There's some algae on the side as well. But obviously if I take it out and clean it, I've got to be able to replace the water that's in there. Now at the moment the hydrofogger's just not coming on. It hasn't switched on all week because I was hoping to use up the last bit of water in there. But I'm going to have to sacrifice it. And the problem is I haven't got the water to replace it. But I did have a little brainwave this morning. Why not just take the header tank outside and put the RO unit straight into the header tank and fill it up? Providing it doesn't get so full that I can't lift it, obviously. Because that holds quite a bit more than the Vander bucket, and when that's full, it's heavy. I won't say it's too heavy to lift, but it gets picked up and put down several times on the way from outside to in here. It doesn't get done in one go. Oh, there was something else I saw. Something else. Nope, not yet. Nope, it's not going to come. But as you can see, a lot of the Oncidium types that were mounted have come down out of the roof. I've got to try and get their colour back. They've just got washed out, just too light for them over the longer days as well, which doesn't help. And the light also caught that. Yeah, so that's been brought down. Yeah, and I suspect that's what that is on there as well. Yeah, so yeah. This idea of only having 1 layer of shade netting might have to go by the wayside next year. I think I'm okay up here. I haven't seen any light burn on the Cattleya shelves, so I think that bit's okay. But nonetheless, down here, these do look okay as well. I don't see any light burn to any degree down there. So yeah, it's just this bit really. That's the bit that suffered the worst, because it gets the light from there and then again from there. So it's continuous all day long. Plus, you know, when the sun's high, it comes in the roof as well. So most of the Dendrobiums that live up in the roof can take the light. They're okay with it. So they're doing okay. My Friedrichsianum, which is squashed round the corner at the moment, because I'm trying to get, these are the new growths up here, and I'm trying to get them to push over that way, which is why it's been turned round sideways to draw those over this way a bit. And the idea will be that as they get long enough and they start to arch over, they'll arch over the top of this year's blooming canes. These were the canes that bloomed this year. There's all the spikes everywhere. And then these will come over the top of them and replace them. Yeah. Next year's blooms are here. That's this lot. And we have larger and a greater number of canes than we have had blooming this year. So I think next year it's going to be even better. Which is good, because some of my other Dendrobiums are not. My Dendrobium Nestor and my Anosmum have not done well this year. They've both produced less canes than the year before. So they're not as happy as they once were. Reasons unknown. I've got a feeling they might have bloomed their heads off and didn't get any help at that time of year. You know, in other words, to push that sheer number of blooms out drained the canes, because they weren't getting watered and fed perhaps as much as they should have been to help with the blooms. That will get adjusted next year. And my theory is that if the blooming actually drained the canes, it could have delayed not only the start of the new growths, but also the number of them. And that's only a theory, but I can't think why else they would not do as well as they did the year before. So working on that. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. The only other thing, what I will film today is the last part of the third set of updates, part 4, which is the cooler, shadier ones. I think that's about the only set of plants I'm actually going to hand water today. The rest are just going to get the sprayer. Simply because of most of my other pots are in a media that if they get a bit too much water from the sprayer, it's just going to run out the bottom. It's not the end of the world this time of year, if you see what I mean. So I think I'm going to use the sprayer today to just catch up, basically, and see where we go from there. So I'll film that. That takes a little bit of those updates, take a bit of putting together, because obviously I've got to drag in the pictures from the previous update and set them up in the right place, and then put the video clip of the same plant on the end of that, do the pop-ups for the plant name and any blooms that I've got, they've got to be slotted in, and then I've got to record the soundtracks that go with each of the stills. So they're a bit fiddly, those videos, but it keeps me on my toes. This video is going to take so much work. I'll go into the computer, plug the lead in, download the clip or clips, yeah, it's probably run on to 2, and open up my software, open up my project start, point those 2 clips into the gap, pull the ending up and save it. It'll probably take me 2 minutes. Unfortunately, there are some that do take quite a bit longer, and I'm happy with that. As I say, it keeps me on my toes, keeps me in practice using the software. Otherwise I get a bit slack. And I'll see you next time. So that'll be tomorrow's video, the part 4 of the third set of updates. And then that's those done until December. So I can file all the stuff to do with it away and put it on my backup hard drive and get it all off the computer, because it takes up an awful lot of space. And then we'll revisit that project in December. Middle of winter. So that'll be tomorrow's video. Nothing on Saturday, and Sunday will probably be whatever I film at the show, and then we'll get back to some sort of normality next week. And I'll see you then. Thanks for dropping. Oh, let's have another look. These are still hanging in there. They have faded a little bit, but this little Laelia Broughtonia cross is it's funny actually. It started dropping blooms, and I thought, oh crikey, they're not going to last long. But it still had some buds to open, and then it stopped. So I think a couple of those blooms might have been damaged a bit, yeah, near their base or something like that, and just got cracked or slightly broken, and so they dropped. But these seem to be lasting okay. Lovely delicate patterning on the lip. And lovely, you won't see it, it'll probably look white on camera, but they are a really, really subtle shade of pink, magenta type pink. So very attractive. And looks like these are starting to go. I've still got some to open on here, so there's still more to come. But yeah, so some stuff coming, some stuff going. That's how it is. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.